Welcome to the Daily Coffee Pro by Mapper Forward, friends. Recently, I was in a conversation with a dear friend of mine, and we were talking about specialty coffee cultures. And it was a really interesting discussion whereby we were comparing how specialty coffee cultures define themselves. And it was a fantastic conversation, and one that I thought we should start talking about on the podcast. Now, the context of understanding what a specialty coffee culture is as important as the context we bring to when we're talking about coffee itself. So when we use the word coffee, we need to understand the context of which it's being discussed. Are we talking about roasted coffee? Are we talking about a cup of coffee? Are we talking about green coffee? The term coffee requires context for us to understand how we are defining it and how we are going to approach the discussion around it. This is very similar for specialty coffee. Now, if you just go by the simple agreed upon definition of what is specialty coffee, well, that's been loosely defined over the years, and it's become more and more specific, but still changes every now and then. In general, when we use the term specialty coffee, we're referring to the grade of the quality of the coffee as a green coffee. So how do you take that and apply it to a specialty coffee culture? Culture in rabbit's ears for those who are just listening to this episode of the podcast. Now, this is important because different coffee cultures around the world claim that they know better than other people or other cultures what specialty coffee is or should be. And specifically when companies are taking, or individuals are taking what their idea of specialty coffee is to another geography or another culture and trying to transplant and enforce what their idea of specialty coffee is onto another community. Now, this has a ton of issues that come with it. Why? Because it suggests entitlement. It suggests that you know for a different culture more than or better than what they know for their own developing or developed specialty coffee industry. And I got to tell you folks, I see this happen all the time, that somebody believes that they know better for a different specialty coffee industry or culture more than what that culture knows for itself. Now, me being raised in the Australian specialty coffee industry, I cannot tell you how many times I have heard Australians say, I'm going to go to America and teach the Americans how to make coffee, or I'm going to take my coffee brand or my model to America and teach the Americans all about specialty coffee. Some might say that I did that with Elixir specialty coffee. That was not the case. With Elixir Specialty Coffee, I was based here in Australia and we opened an arm of the business, or we opened the company for distribution in the US, and it was being run by an American for the first few months, and then he decided he couldn't run the business anymore. I had to go over there. So I did not intend to be somebody in America that was launching a originally Australian focused specialty coffee, brand new, innovative specialty coffee product. What we do see though, and we have seen it written in the press, especially in coffee, and we have seen it spoken about on podcasts and in different platforms, where people feel that they are going to take what they believe specialty coffee is to another culture and change that culture. Today, I want to highlight why I think we should stop doing that. Because again, context is important. If we are talking about specialty coffee, specifically around green bean, that's one thing. That's more definable. We can bring that back to numbers and statistics and specific grades of green coffee. However, when we start to take it towards roasting and brewing and the idea of, what culture is around specialty coffee, we get into some serious grey area. Now, certain people, and this has been a debate for the ages in specialty coffee. Can you class dark roasted specialty coffee as specialty coffee, or should all specialty coffee be roasted lighter before we can class it as proper, real specialty coffee? And should there be a specific way that you should be drinking specialty coffee before it's considered specialty coffee? And is a specialty coffee culture built off of a specific type of brewing? Is it just espresso, or is it more manual brewing? Or can batch brew be considered that type of specialty coffee, given that it's kind of really easy to make? Well, all of these things are up in the air and, by my standard, not definable as a metric for saying whether a specialty coffee culture is valid or not. If we start saying my way of doing specialty coffee is more correct than your way of doing specialty coffee, and the culture that I belong in is more relevant and valid than the culture that you belong in for specialty coffee, and we have more experience than you have, etc., 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 all we're doing is creating greater divides between our industries. What we're doing is we are removing inclusivity, and we are creating barriers that prevent us from learning from each other. And what I would like to encourage is that we stay open to hearing about each other's specialty coffee cultures and learning about each other's specialty coffee cultures, and taking an approach as we would if we were visiting a country that we had never been exposed to, and being open to learning the way that that country, that city, that suburb expresses its culture in specialty coffee, without the need to inflict our definition of specialty coffee as a culture onto anybody else's culture. I cannot tell you the number of times that I would be working in a cafe in America and somebody would say to me, so an Australian would come in and say, "Oh my God, it's so good to have an Australian barista. Americans don't know anything about how to make good coffee." And it was always sad for me to hear that, because what it suggested was that Australians were closed off to the idea that different could be equally as good as the coffee culture that they came from. And it's just heartbreaking to me that people are going to another country to experience cultural things like cafes and requiring it to be the same as their own coffee culture. And so let's be open, let's be open-minded, let's be encouraging, let's be growth-focused, and let's not be homogenous about what specialty coffee cultures should look like and be like. Because the more diversity and the more flavor and diversity and flavor that we have amongst specialty coffee cultures, the richer our industry is and the more exciting it is to go and visit different countries and immerse ourselves in each other's specialty coffee cultures. Learn from each other, grow together in different ways, and we all should be opening ourselves up to different experiences. When we're drinking coffee, when we're experiencing specialty coffee hospitality, and where we're going into spaces and looking at cafes in a different way and learning from them and marveling at them and being present in the way that we experience each other's cultures. Peace, love, and peanut butter, friends. Have an amazing rest of your day.